Mutual News. President Reagan was shot in the chest today by an assailant whom police say is now in custody. The assassination attempt occurred this afternoon outside the Washington Hilton Hotel, where Mr. Reagan had delivered a speech. Mutual's Ross Simpson at George Washington University Hospital in Washington interviewed Willis King, a witness to the arrival of the president there.
He got out of his car. The guy grabbed him by the arm and walked in with him.
The president was able to walk?
Yeah, he was holding him, and he was holding his side, and you could see a spot of blood.
Willis King saw the president being admitted to the hospital. Correspondent Simpson learned that a bullet passed within an inch of Reagan's heart, but did miss it. Mr. Reagan has emerged from surgery and is believed to be in stable condition. 3 other people were also shot, one of whom was James Brady, presidential news secretary. A presidential spokesman denies reports that Brady may have died, but Brady is reportedly in serious condition. Brady was shot in the head. Again, the suspect in the shooting is in custody in Washington. This is news from Mutual Radio. Bob Moore reporting.
Everywhere, people are discovering the variety of Amway quality products without going shopping.
My laundry looks great with Amway SA8.
Nutrilite food bars by Amway get this teacher through the morning.
Artistry Cosmetics and Jewelry by Amway get me through the evening.
Yes, Amway has it all. Contact an Amway distributor and get the whole story.
Shop the world of Amway, so easy to do.
Every year, a lot of State Farm policyholders move. But you know, not many of them move away from State Farm Insurance. Because the kind of good value and good neighbor service they want is there just about anywhere they relocate. They stay with State Farm for a good price and good neighbor service for their life, health, homeowners, and car insurance. You can expect the same when you call the State Farm agent near you.
And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The suspect in the presidential assassination attempt is identified as 22-year-old John Warnout Hinckley, Jr. of Evergreen, Colorado. Carol Pierce of Columbus, Ohio, was an eyewitness as the shots were fired outside the Washington Hilton Hotel. She says the gunman reached over her right shoulder to fire the shots this afternoon.
I was just shocked that it was just so unreal. You know, I saw the gun and the shots going off, and I said, what? And I just couldn't imagine that happening. You know, it just seemed so unreal.
Eyewitness to the assassination attempt, Carol Pierce of Columbus, Ohio. At the White House, Secretary of State Alexander Haig met with reporters to discuss the situation and the suspect. Haig was asked if there is any indication the attack on the president was part of any conspiracy.
There are no indications of anything like that now, and we are not going to say a word on that subject until the situation clarifies, of course.
Secretary of State Alexander Haig. There is shocked reaction to the assassination attempt. Republican Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona, a conservative ally of Ronald Reagan for many years, expressed these feelings on Capitol Hill.
If you count the 2 attempts that were made on President Ford's life, this is the 6th time since 1960 that attempts have been made on the lives of our president. It's only been a couple of hours since this happened, so all I can say is that we pray to God that everything's all right. Knowing Reagan as I do, he's a very strong man in very good health.
Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona. You're listening to Mutual News.
The sun is a thief. It can rob your car's vinyl, rubber, and leather of its beauty, luster, of its value. Stop that thief with STP's new son of a gun with sunscreen. That's right, sunscreen. It's the only vinyl protector with an exclusive sunscreen formula that screens out the sun's damaging rays. STP's son of a gun with sunscreen shines brighter, protects longer, leaves a fresh, clean scent. Don't let the sun rob you blind.
Rodney Dangerfield for Pilot Pen.
I don't get no respect. I park my car. The cop says, "This your car?" I say, "Sure." Then this is your ticket. Then he can't find his pen. Writes me a ticket with my pilot pen. Then someone yells police. He takes off. I get a ticket. He gets my pilot pen. I tell you, you got to hold on to it with 2 hands. And the price. The pilot fine liner, 79 cents. The razor point, only 89 cents. You want respect? Get your own pilot pen.
Repeating the situation at this hour, President Reagan was shot in the chest today by an assailant whom police say is now in custody. Mr. Reagan has emerged from surgery at a Washington hospital and is believed to be in stable condition. 3 other people were also shot. One of them is James Brady. White House has denied reports that Mr. Brady has died, describes him in serious condition. This is Bob Moore, Mutual News.
This is Mutual News. Dick Rosset with our continuing coverage of the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan this afternoon in Washington, D.C. The president, as of course you know by now, was shot in the chest by a young gunman. He underwent emergency surgery at George Washington University Hospital and was reported in stable condition. We have a little information on the shooting itself. Jack Warner of the Secret Service said the gunman, who appeared to be acting alone, was armed with a .22 caliber revolver. Earlier, the authorities had reported the weapon was a .38, and Bill Grudy, who was the only radio reporter there with a tape recorder, said by the sound of it, it certainly sounded like a larger caliber than a .22. But the Secret Service now says that the gunman used a .22 caliber revolver. Bill Grudy, who was there, as we said, the only radio reporter, he was assigned to the pool task this afternoon, reported from the scene. Now, you have to remember, this was several hours ago, right after the shooting. Right now, we have a report from the hospital. The president is in good condition, still undergoing surgery to remove a bullet from his chest. And there are conflicting reports on Jim Brady's condition. Brady is the presidential press secretary who was hit in the forehead by the assailant. Some of the wire services are claiming that Brady succumbed. Two White House officials say that he is alive and in serious condition. Let's hear Bill Grudy's tape recorded earlier this afternoon.
The man who the police have been holding on the ground has been wrestled into a squad car by Secret Service agents carrying submachine guns as an ambulance pulls in front of the Hilton Hotel to deal with the people who are lying on the ground who have been shot. One man, his head is on a grating and is bleeding profusely. Mass confusion as the ambulance pulls in. It was a short burst of gunfire. Bang, bang, bang. They took the president's limousine. The president's limousine took off quickly. James Brady has been shot in the head, I'm told. The ambulance is pulled up in front of the Hilton here. Medics are surrounding Brady.
Bill Grudy, Mutualist White House man, recorded that in front of the Washington Hilton Hotel at just around 2:20 this afternoon, after President Reagan had left the hotel, having addressed an AFL-CIO function, was on his way to reboard his limousine for the trip back to the White House, waved to some friendly bystanders, and this young 22-year-old man pulled his .22 caliber pistol and got off several shots, critically wounding Jim Brady, whose condition is problematical at this point, and striking President Reagan in the chest. The president was ambulatory. He was actually able, with assistance, to walk into George Washington University Hospital, where he was, within an hour of that time, wheeled into surgery for removal of that .22 caliber slug. Reaction is pouring in from all over the world to this near tragedy. We hope it stays that way. We won't know until the president recovers from his surgery. And perhaps the most poignant expression of concern came from Senator Edward M. Kennedy, who lost two brothers to assassins' bullets. And Kennedy is quoted as saying, "With our prayers for those who have been wounded, I think must go our resolution to rid our society of hatred. Violence and hatred are alien to everything this country is about." Other cabinet officials to determine the actual hierarchy or the direction of the government, to reassure our allies and to reassure everyone at home that there is continuity. And the president, who we all believe will survive, will still be incapacitated for some time and will not be able to attend to routine presidential duties. Vice President Bush will then assume those duties because just last week, President Reagan appointed him to head his crisis management team. We're waiting for more information from the White House and from George Washington University Hospital. Most assuredly, the news will come from the White House, the news concerning the president's condition. It will be flashed to the White House, and then, of course, Larry Speaks or somebody else on the White House press team will brief the reporters and give us the news that we've been hoping and praying for, that the president survived surgery, that he is going to make a successful recovery. He was shot in the chest by a young man, 22 years old, calls Colorado home. He's in police custody at this time. Police have given no motives for the attempt. We understand that the young man was educated in grammar school and in high school in a Dallas, Texas suburb, and his father was in the oil business, and not too much is known about the young man except those facts, and obviously facts will be trickling out as the FBI continues its investigation. Vice President Bush, as we said, canceled his plans to go on an extended speaking tour of Texas, flew back to Washington right upon hearing of the president's shooting this afternoon. We are waiting now for word from the White House, and Mutual's Bill Grudy and the full team of Mutual reporters who are all over Washington to give us updated information on President Reagan's condition. We do have some information from Lynn Nofsinger, who is at George Washington University Hospital, and in the tape that we're going to play, he describes President Reagan's attitude as he entered the hospital, something we haven't heard before. Let's hear that tape.
As he was going down the hall on the gurney, I guess they call him, to surgery, he winked at Baker. He had earlier told Senator Laxalt, who was there, don't worry about me, I'll make it. He had told Mrs. Reagan, honey, I forgot to duck. I forgot to duck. And as they were wheeling him into surgery, he saw Meese and Baker and Deaver there, and he said, who's minding the store? And then when he got into the operating room, he looked at the doctors and he said, please tell me you're Republicans.
Typical Reagan wit. Here he was with a man with a bullet in his chest with a collapsed lung, and making those comments. That was Lynn Nofsinger describing the president's attitude. Let's go to Bill Grudy at the White House. Bill? Bill, are you listening? We thought we had Bill. Bill, are you there? Apparently not. He was.
Okay. Yes, we are here. We are here. I know they were making some technical adjustments in the earphones. And
Okay, Bill. What you got?
Not much more than we had before. We're still waiting, and they're not going to be saying anything until the president is confirmed out of surgery, and they have something concrete. A couple of interesting tidbits that I managed to pick up from some people here. The president apparently kept his sense of humor, and was told that as he was being wheeled into the operating room, he said to one of the doctors, please tell me if all the doctors here are Republicans.
Yeah, we had Lynn Nofsinger saying that.
Yeah, Lynn said that. And told Nancy, gee, I forgot to duck. So he does have a fantastic sense of humor, and if there's anything that you need in a trying situation like this, I suppose that is that is it.
He also said to Paul Laxalt, who's one of his closest political advisors and longtime friends, don't worry about me, I'll make it. He was conscious. He did walk, with assistance, of course, into the hospital. His condition at the time was described as stable. What did Larry Speaks say about 20 minutes ago?
He said that he was in good condition, and he said that James Brady was in serious condition. The reports that he was dead untrue. But I still want to caution you to be very careful where Mr. Brady is concerned. There may be a clinical situation here, as we discussed before, that what is serious, what is not serious, what is and Ross Simpson, our man there, was talking with one of the doctors and said that the outlook for Jim Brady is not very good at all. So I would be very surprised if what Larry Speaks has to say is something of encouragement.
Yeah, we want to talk to Ross, either at the hospital or back at the shop here, to get as much a fill-in as we can on the medical side of it. He spent practically the entire afternoon at George Washington University.
Apparently has a very close contact and is now in the process of briefing some other reporters, and I'm sure he'll be on with us in just a couple of minutes. He was apparently the only source of information at the hospital at this time.
Yeah, we have a note here that the Academy Awards are scheduled to be presented in Los Angeles tonight, but in light of the assassination attempt, They're having a meeting out there to decide what to do. You might recall that the president taped a message to be shown on the Oscars.
I doubt very highly whether it will be shown. Although you never know. You know, there's also this trooper mentality, and I don't mean that in a disparaging sense at all.
Yeah.
There is the show must go on, and I wouldn't be surprised if just to emphasize that everything is normal, that the president said, "Okay, run the tape. Let's let it go. Let's just try and carry on as best we can." That's just kind of something that's in his makeup. It would not surprise me at all.
All right, so we're all just sitting here waiting for
That's
information. And what is the mood over there at the White House?
The mood has given way from an atmosphere of frenzy to one of quiet, and this is beginning to sink in. The seriousness of Jim Brady's situation, regardless of what Larry Speaks says, is beginning to sink in. And my gosh, look what happened. And it's kind of shell shock. It's hard to get people to answer coherently, and maybe you shouldn't expect them, because half of these people were out there this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I know for somebody who was out there, for me, it's a very exhausting experience. For a couple of moments of terror, you don't know where the shots are coming from. Are they at you? Or do you continue talking? Do you hold the microphone up, get for cover? What do you do? And the trauma of seeing Jim Brady on the sidewalk, I know for a lot of people on this staff, was very, very severe.
Of course.
And the shock is now in this place beginning to sink in. It's things are quite quiet. A lot of people here, but not a lot of talking.
Apparently, it was a .22 caliber pistol, and not a .38. Is Jack Warner, the Secret Service, has identified the weapon.
Well, it's possible that a lot of us thought that it was a .38 because it was fired again under this portico, and the sound from the pistol can be amplified, and that can be very deceiving. Although I must say, it did not sound like a .22.
Yeah. Bill, we have some late tape here. I'd like to play. I haven't heard it myself. Lynn Knopfsinger at George Washington University Hospital. He said the president was conscious as he was wheeled into surgery, and he briefed reporters at the White House on the president's condition. Have we played that, I wonder, or is this new tape? It's new tape. All right, let's hear Lynn Knopfsinger on the president's condition from the White House.
He went into surgery roughly an hour ago. He is still there and will be there for a while longer. However, the doctors have come out and given a preliminary report to Mrs. Reagan, and their word is that his condition is good and it is stable. Beyond that, I have no further comment. Regarding Jim Brady, the press secretary, he is still in surgery. He has a head wound, and beyond that, I have no further knowledge.
That was Lynn Knopfsinger briefing reporters. He was at the hospital, and he was briefing reporters at the White House, apparently. Bill, Ross Simpson, who's been famous this afternoon all over television, being quoted, and with impeccable medical credentials, spent most of the day at George Washington University Hospital, and we can't wait to sink our teeth into him now and get the debriefing. What did you learn over there, Ross?
Well, I spoke, of course, to Lynn Knopfsinger as he came in the hospital. I was relieved a short while ago. Jim Slade is there covering the Knopfsinger news conference, and I asked Lynn on the way out if Jim Brady was still alive, and he said no comment. I had been told earlier up on the hospital suite itself that the prognosis was not good. Obviously, I've been told other things that I'd rather not discuss at this point, because it was not a pretty picture when you see a man, a colleague, shot like this, and the life ebbing out of him as he's wheeled down to an emergency area, and his wife standing nearby. But let's just say that it does not look good for Jim Brady. We have to believe that he is still alive, hope and pray that he's still alive. He can be kept alive mechanically, even if things should go badly for him. But the surgery will be most delicate. The people I've talked to, the intern who was assigned to that SCAT unit, that computerized CAT scan unit that takes the picture of the brain so they can exactly see where that bullet is, where it's lodged, and what damage it has done, said it just didn't look good to him. As a doctor, he said, I would not rate the chances of survival very good at all.
Well, we had 3 television nets, and we had AP and UPI all saying that Brady had succumbed. But your information is that he's still alive.
That he's still alive.
Some condition, we don't know.
Yes.
Serious, according to the White House, but that's probably not the clinical sense of serious.
No, it isn't. And, of course, Mrs. Brady is nearby. She's just a short distance away. The staff there at George Washington University Hospital are doing their utmost to keep her apprised of what they're doing for Jim as he's, undergoing this surgery at this hour.
Yeah. Well, what about the president?
Well, the president, his wound is serious also. Let's not kid ourselves. The wound, anywhere you puncture the body with a bullet, it's serious. The trauma of just being shot. I've never been shot. Some people have. Some people, take it very lightly. There's no response at all. I just checked the wire rooms a moment ago, and the president was quoted as chatting with his people.
Telling jokes.
Right, sort of a John Wayne type, the cowboy coming out of him, trying, I think, to reassure the country. Think of his position. Think of what this means, the ramifications that an attempted assassination has worldwide. And you begin to put it in perspective. He's being braver, perhaps, than most of us could be in a situation like this. I saw a report a short while ago, unconfirmed report, that he had been removed from exploratory surgery. Yeah. If that's true, then that is the best news we've had all day, because the people I talked to said the operation could go 1 to 4 hours for open chest surgery. The shorter the time, the less damage. Mm-hmm. The more time, the more extensive the damage, and the greater the chances are against survival. So I hope this is true.
The internal bleeding, which you mentioned earlier, was that a supposition, or did you know it for a fact?
No, I knew it for a fact. I got to know quite by accident. Let me back up just a little bit. I was on my way to work, and I listened to the radio coming to work, and I heard that there had been an incident at a Washington hotel. As I got closer to where I should have made my turnoff and get in contact with people, then I began to realize that this thing was beginning to roll. I checked with our desk. I was assigned to Georgetown University Hospital. That's where we thought some of the wounded might be taken. At this time, we had no knowledge that the president had been shot or Mr. Brady. Yeah. Then, as I monitored other reports, I found out it was George Washington Hospital, which, knowing the city, made more sense to me. So I stopped off at Washington Circle, jumped out of my car. By that time, a crowd had gathered outside the front of the hospital. A situation like this, you start trying to figure out which way to get into the hospital. I happened to pick the right back door. I got in, and Mrs. Brady came by with 2 Secret Service agents in tow. I hung up the phone, and I took off after them, and I wound up upstairs where the action was. I got right through security. Yeah. I was up there for 5 or 10 minutes unnoticed, making phone calls. Yeah. And then as they started shuffling me down to other rooms, I happened to stick my head into a room and saw that Jim Brady was there. He was being worked on. They were doing the scans of his brain. I stopped across the hall, and I was able to spend about a half an hour there. So I guess I was the only one up on that floor.
And you talked to doctors?
I talked to doctors, everybody I could get a hold of, and I happened to get the intern who saw the pictures of the brain and gave us a very fine report. Then I found a house staff member, a doctor, whose friend was the senior medical officer in charge of this trauma situation, and he was running in and out and getting more information for me. That was how I was able to file and validate the information as true.
Did they indicate possible or likely brain damage
to
Brady?
Oh, I think it was. I don't want to presume that. But it's just, Dick. It's so massive. It just was absolutely horrendous to see this, and he was wheeled right by me. I stood right in the hallway, right across the hall from the unit, and the only thing I could see that Jim Brady was alive was the EKG unit, the portable unit on the foot of his stretcher, and it was banging out the heartbeats.
Yeah. Well, as you said just a moment or so ago, something we got to grasp and hang on to is the possibility the president is out of exploratory surgery, which would have made his time in the OR maybe an hour, which, I mean, as you also said, the shorter the time he's in there, the better the prognosis. But we do have President Reagan in the hospital at George Washington University Hospital undergoing surgery for a gunshot wound. The next news will be out of the hospital. We hope it's good news. The president has survived the operation and will make a full recovery. This is Mutual's continuing coverage of the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
President Reagan has undergone surgery at George Washington University Hospital in Washington for a gunshot wound to his chest. The White House says Mr. Reagan's condition is good and stable. The president was shot this afternoon outside the Washington Hilton Hotel after speaking to members of the AFL-CIO inside the hotel. White House Press Secretary James Brady, Secret Service agent Tim McCarthy, and a Washington policeman were also wounded. Initial reports were that Secretary Brady had died from a gunshot wound to the head, but the White House later said those reports are untrue. Both the Secret Service agent and the Washington policeman are listed in critical condition. Authorities have identified the alleged gunman as 22-year-old John Hinckley, Jr. of Evergreen, Colorado. He's now in police custody. The weapon used is said to have been a .22 caliber pistol. As so far can be determined, only one bullet struck the president. Again, Mr. Reagan has undergone surgery at George Washington Hospital, where officials list his condition as good and stable. This is Mike McKinley for Mutual Lifestyle Reports.
Hi, Pat Summerall to inquire about the health of your lawn. Is it looking pale and thin? Are there bare spots? For a healthier lawn, True Value Hardware stores offer this prescription. Start with a quality lawn seed like True Test Sun and Light Shade Grass Seed. It's just $1.99 a pound, or $4.99 for 3 pounds. And to keep your lawn growing, get True Test Supreme Lawn Food for just $4.99 a bag. For all the supplies and tools needed to put your lawn and garden in top condition, visit your participating True Value Hardware store.
Where can you find a good price on auto insurance these days? Well, you can follow the lead of millions who found good, low-cost car insurance at State Farm. The kind of protection you need is there at State Farm's low rates. Plus, the good neighbor service you really can't put a price on. See your State Farm agent about auto insurance today. And while you're there, ask about a real value on life, health, and homeowners insurance, too.
And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
It's the president, cried one of the people in the emergency room at George Washington Hospital as Ronald Reagan was brought in. Then, over the hospital speaker system came the call, trauma unit to emergency room. We need the cardiologist team. This account comes from an 18-year-old student, Robert Garashi of Fort Lee, New Jersey, who happened to be at the hospital when Mr. Reagan arrived. Garashi says he saw the First Lady, Nancy Reagan, walking beside the stretcher when the president was taken from the emergency room. He says the president arrived around 2:35 this afternoon and was in the emergency room until 3:20 when Mr. Reagan was taken from the emergency room to the operating room. Again, President Reagan was shot and wounded in the left chest today as he left the Washington Hilton Hotel and was taken to George Washington University Hospital for surgery. 3 others, including news spokesman James Brady, also were wounded. Secretary of State Haig said Mr. Reagan was shot in the left lung, but he added that the president was conscious and his condition was stable when he entered surgery. Earlier, a White House spokesman reported that Mr. Reagan walked into the hospital on his own. Police have arrested a man identified as 22-year-old John Hinckley, Jr. of Evergreen, Colorado. A Secret Service spokesman says the gunman, who appeared to be acting alone, was armed with a .22 caliber pistol. Mutual News will continue its special programming on the attempted assassination of President Reagan and have other developments as they come along at 6:05 Eastern Time. This is Mike McKinley for Mutual Lifestyle Reports.
Hi, Pat Summerall to inquire about the health of your lawn. Is it looking pale and thin? Are there bare spots? For a healthier lawn, True Value Hardware stores offer this prescription. Start with a quality lawn seed like True Test Sun and Light Shade Grass Seed. It's just $1.99 a pound, or $4.99 for 3 pounds. And to keep your lawn growing, get True Test Supreme Lawn Food for just $4.99 a bag. For all the supplies and tools needed to put your lawn and garden in top condition, visit your participating True Value Hardware store.
Where can you find a good price on auto insurance these days? Well, you can follow the lead of millions who found good, low-cost car insurance at State Farm. The kind of protection you need is there at State Farm's low rates. Plus, the good neighbor service you really can't put a price on. See your State Farm agent about auto insurance today. And while you're there, ask about a real value on life, health, and homeowners insurance, too.
And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Mutual News. President Reagan was shot and wounded this afternoon just moments after delivering a speech at a Washington hotel. The bullet entered Reagan's left chest and reportedly hit his left lung. The president underwent exploratory surgery at George Washington University Hospital this afternoon. The president, at last report, is in good condition. Doctors have apparently controlled the bleeding, but there seems to be some confusion at this point as to whether the doctors actually removed the bullet. There have been reports the doctors decided to leave the bullet in the lung rather than risk further damage. White House official Lynn Nofsinger says Reagan was joking when he was taken into the hospital.
As he was going down the hall on the gurney, I guess they call him, to surgery, he winked at Baker. He had earlier told Senator Laxalt, who was there, don't worry about me, I'll make it. He told Mrs. Reagan, honey, I forgot to duck.
White House official Lynn Nofsinger. This is news from Mutual Radio. Chuck Wheeler reporting.
The hot, merciless sun is a killer. It can kill the luster, the beauty of your car's vinyl, rubber, and leather. Until now, introducing new STP Son of a Gun with sunscreen. That's right, an exclusive new sunscreen formula. The only vinyl protector that has it. Screens out the sun's damaging rays, protects and beautifies better and longer. Use new STP Son of a Gun with sunscreen, because the sun can be murder on your car.
A railroad train clatters across America almost a century ago. Its passenger, Dr. Matthew Shields, on assignment for the Red Cross. Wherever the rails carried him, Shields would convert the car into a classroom and teach first aid to America. First aid in a railroad car was only the beginning. Today, as Red Cross begins its second century, we teach first aid and CPR to over 3 million people a year. It's still only a beginning. Red Cross, ready for a new century.
Moments after the assassination attempt this afternoon in Washington on the life of President Reagan, the Secret Service arrested 22-year-old John Hinckley of Evergreen, Colorado, as a suspect in the assassination attempt. White House press officer Dave Prosperi was standing just outside the Washington Hilton when the shooting occurred. He describes what happened.
I was standing on the driveway, and I was walking outside, Sam, and all of a sudden I heard 4 shots. I turned around, and I just saw a lot of bodies moving in different groups. I saw Jim on the ground, Jim Brady, and then I saw another group against the wall, and at that point the limousine had already moved.
White House press officer Dave Prosperi says he saw the president hustled into his waiting limousine and rushed to the George Washington University Hospital. Republican Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona, speaking to reporters on Capitol Hill, deplored the assassination attempt.
It's a terrible thing to have happened, and we hope someday this foolishness stops.
Republican Senator Barry Goldwater, a close friend of the president. 3 other people were wounded this afternoon during the assassination attempt. White House Press Secretary James Brady, a Secret Service agent, Timothy McCarthy, and a Washington police officer, Thomas Delahanty. The television networks this afternoon were quoting a congressional aide as saying James Brady had died, but that is not true, according to a White House official. Says Brady is in critical condition, but he is alive. You were listening to Mutual News.
Hi, Pat Summerall to inquire about the health of your lawn. Is it looking pale and thin? Are there bare spots? For a healthier lawn, True Value Hardware stores offer this prescription. Start with a quality lawn seed like True Test Sun and Light Shade Grass Seed. It's just $1.99 a pound, or $4.99 for 3 pounds. And to keep your lawn growing, get True Test Supreme Lawn Food for just $4.99 a bag. For all the supplies and tools needed to put your lawn and garden in top condition, visit your participating True Value Hardware store.
Where can you find a good price on auto insurance these days? Well, you can follow the lead of millions who found good, low-cost car insurance at State Farm. The kind of protection you need is there at State Farm's low rates. Plus, the good neighbor service you really can't put a price on. See your State Farm agent about auto insurance today. And while you're there, ask about a real value on life, health, and homeowners insurance, too.
And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
To repeat, President Reagan was shot and wounded this afternoon just moments after delivering a speech at a Washington hotel. The president has undergone surgery at the George Washington University Hospital. The president is said to be in good condition. It's not known at this point whether the doctors have removed the bullet. Mutual News will continue with coverage of the assassination attempt on the life of President Reagan at 5 minutes past the hour. This is Chuck Wheeler, Mutual News.
This is Dick Ross, Mutual News in Washington, and we're continuing with our continuous reporting on the condition of President Reagan, who was shot down this afternoon in front of the Washington Hilton Hotel. He is undergoing surgery, or he may be out of surgery. He sustained a bullet wound in his left chest. The prognosis is good. We've heard reports in the White House within the hour that his condition is good and stable. And Ross Simpson was at the hospital for most of the afternoon. We got some pretty good information, in fact, exclusive information on the magnitude or the type of wound the president sustained, Ross.
It's a traumatic wound, to say the least, Dick. It's in a vital area. Anytime you get close to the heart, 4, 5, 6, 7 inches away, you do considerable damage to the body. That's the control center. That's where it all begins, right there. This particular wound was sketched out on a piece of paper here for me at the hospital by a faculty member, one of the doctors on staff at the hospital. His friend was the man in charge of seeing to care for the president and for his presidential news secretary, Jim Brady. And he sketched this out. He sketched the body and the heart and the lung area. Now, this bullet penetrated the president's body on the left side of the lung, about 1 inch from the heart.
Yeah.
That's very close. Mm-hmm. It set up some massive bleeding inside, and that bleeding, of course, when it filled that diaphragm area of the body, it collapsed the lung. There's just no place for it to go. It just flattened it like a pancake. And of course, that blood must be removed very quickly, because it can also fill the other cavity and shut down the system. The president no longer breathes.
Yeah.
But they were able to get him to George Washington Hospital. It was the closest hospital away, perhaps no more than 7 blocks from the hotel where he was shot. They got him there immediately, knew what the problem was. They took his shirt off. They saw the bullet wound, and they began to insert chest tubes, drainage tubes, and they used suction to remove that blood. Now, obviously, the president is losing blood at this time.
Yeah.
So they have to do a cross match on his blood type.
Which is O negative.
It's O negative.
Difficult to match.
Beg pardon?
Difficult to match.
Yes, but they were able to get 30 units of blood. Mm-hmm. And of course, that facilitated movement. In other words, they could do the chest X-rays. They could do everything right there in the prep room. They knew what they were dealing with, and they knew right away that surgery was in order. So I would place the time about 4 p.m. That was the time that the source of mine, the doctor who was running back and forth between the two treating areas where Brady and the president were being treated, and was feeding me information, getting me information, because I couldn't move through that area. I'd been kicked out of it a couple of times. He had access to it. So he was able to tell me what was happening. He said that the operation is what they call in medical jargon as a thoracotomy. This is nothing more than open chest surgery. It is serious. When you open a person's body cavity, it is major surgery. The only thing we can hope for at this time is that there is no massive damage around that wound. In other words, the bullet didn't fragment. It didn't destroy part of the lung. It didn't perhaps veer off and go down. You know, bullet wounds are strange. You can fire into a person's body and it may come out their shoulder, it may come out their foot, or it may come out an arm.
According to Bill Grudy, who was there at the time of the shooting, it could have even been a ricochet shot with an unusual entry, creating
It could have been anything.
Wound.
It could have been anything. And as I say, though, the doctors were confident. When I left the hospital, they were confident they had the situation under control, as tenuous as it was. And let me repeat that. I don't want to, alarm people unnecessarily, but this is a serious wound. It's a serious operation, and given the president's age of 70, although he is in good physical condition, this is a traumatic experience. This is much like being in a very serious auto accident. It takes time to recuperate from such an event.
He was in marvelous spirits when he entered the hospital. He was joking with reporters and with White House aides. Apparently, the trauma had not hit him at that point.
Perhaps a state of shock. He's the type of individual. If you've watched him now, as we've watched him since his inauguration, you know the type of person he is. He's one to kibitz. He's one to have a great repartee with the press. He'll field questions no matter how hot they are coming toward you. So I would suppose that he tried to sort of set the nation at ease, allay some of the fears that he was in a situation where his life was on the line. But the surgery could go 1 to 4 hours, perhaps even longer, depending, of course, on what type of internal damage has been done.
We haven't seen it confirmed, but about a half hour ago there was a tentative report that he may have been removed from exploratory surgery and returned to his room. But I would think we'd have some confirmation on that if, in fact, it were true. We haven't heard anything since, have we?
No. And exploratory surgery, keep in mind now, that doesn't mean the end of surgery. That just is the initial look-see. They want to go in. The doctor told me that the incision would be about 6 inches, maybe 8 inches on the side of the president's body, because they have to have enough room to get in there and to open up the chest cavity and ascertain what damage that bullet has done. If it's a simple matter of just tying off the arteries, tying off the various blood vessels, then they've got it made. Then the situation is not alarming as it could be.
Any possibility they might leave the bullet in there?
It depends, I suppose, on where it is. It depends on how close it might be lodged. He might require further surgery. This may just be a stopgap measure to stabilize his condition. We just don't know at this point.
Mm-hmm. Ross Simpson, we can't thank you enough. You probably have qualified for an internship at the end of this siege. Your information has been accurate, it's been timely, and unfortunately you can't give us the answer to the question we all want answered, and that is, how soon will he be out of surgery? When will we have a definitive statement from the hospital on his condition? But we thank you very much for sharing this time with us. Yeah, Ross.
I was pre-med in college before I became a broadcaster.
You knew it would come in handy one day, didn't you?
One day.
Thanks again.
I hate that it happened to come this time.
Well, the president is, as far as we know, still under surgeon's care at George Washington University Hospital. Also in that hospital is Jim Brady. James Brady, the affable and terribly bright and witty and marvelous press secretary who sustained the more serious of the two wounds. Well, actually, there were other people wounded during that tragedy in front of the Washington Hilton this afternoon. But Brady's wound, he took a 38 or 22 caliber slug. We still don't know the nomenclature in the forehead, and the prognosis on Jim Brady is very poor. In fact, there have been wire service reports that he has succumbed, reports that have been denied by the White House. Now, if President Reagan should become disabled, Vice President George Bush could temporarily take over the office under a constitutional amendment that grew out of the assassination of John Kennedy back in 1963. And Bush is probably close to Washington now. He's flying in from Texas, where he'd scheduled several speeches once he got the news of the shooting in Washington. He got in Air Force Two and returned, and is due back at Andrews Air Force Base sometime between 6:30 and 7:30 this evening. He will go immediately to the White House and take charge. In the meantime, we are waiting to hear word from the George Washington University Hospital on President Reagan's condition. The Academy Awards will go on tonight, we've been told, although a final decision will have to be made by the Academy itself. Oh, I've just been told that the Academy Awards presentation has been delayed for 24 hours. It will not be carried tonight. The ceremony had a taped segment which featured President Reagan, which obviously will not go. At least we were told it wouldn't when they figured it might go tonight. Now the thing has been put off until tomorrow, and the tape of the president with his message for the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences may or may not play at that time. The Senate halted its business today, and shocked legislators, of course, received news that the president had been wounded. Senator Alan Cranston, Democrat of California, was one of the lawmakers who heard the news and, of course, deplored the shootings that took place this afternoon outside of the Washington Hilton. Here is Senator Cranston.
It's deeply tragic for President Reagan, for Jim Brady, and for the two other people wounded that this assault was made. It's also deeply, deeply tragic for our country that our president from time to time is subjected to assassination assaults, and that people from the highest to the lowest in our land are vulnerable to violence. We have to find some way to change the psychology and the circumstances in our country and indeed in our world that lead to these repeated acts of violence.
Senator Alan Cranston, Democrat of California, reacting to the shooting this afternoon of President Reagan, Presidential News Secretary Jim Brady, a Washington, D.C. policeman, Secret Service agent, all four of whom were hit. Brady was hit the most seriously, remains in serious condition according to the White House, but whether or not that's clinical, is problematical at this point. We do have a report from Jim Slade, who relieved Ross Simpson at George Washington University Hospital. And, of course, we'll go to him immediately to see if there's anything late to report on either President Reagan or Jim Brady. Jim Slade.
At the just a few moments ago, we had a briefing, Dick, from Lynn Nofziger, the president's friend and longtime aide. He says he wanted to correct a couple of misapprehensions that have been frequented. The president has not undergone open heart surgery. The surgery that's being done is on his chest. The bullet did not approach the heart. The president's condition is good and it's stable. He will be out of surgery soon. Nofziger could not give us a time on that, just only that he will be out of surgery soon. The rumors, he also said, about press spokesman Jim Brady dying are not true, but he could not go into any kind of detail on the operations themselves.
So we don't know at this time when President Reagan will be out of surgery. We heard earlier from Ross Simpson, who was at the hospital, that the procedure could last anywhere between an hour, which would have taken him out by like 5 o'clock an hour ago, and 4 hours, which could be earlier this evening.
Dick, with the kind of surgery that's being conducted, and you must remember the president is 70 years old, the kind of surgery that's being conducted could take quite a long time because they have to be so careful, and there are so many parameters that have to be watched. The condition of the other lung, the oxygen to his brain, how the blood is clotting, how it's being siphoned from the chest cavity itself. This is being done very cautiously. The reports are from the doctors inside the operating theater are that his condition is good and stable.
Who is at the hospital right now? Are regular briefings being conducted?
Lynn Nofziger is coming back from the operating area from time to time to brief us and to keep us informed on primarily the president's condition. He doesn't have that much to say about Jim Brady. He's not privy to that information. However, he is being attended to, and once again, the rumors about Brady dying are not true.
How about the other two, the Secret Service man and the D.C. policeman? Are they at George Washington University Hospital as well?
That I don't know, and Nofziger hasn't been able to get that information. There were reports that the D.C. policeman is in critical condition. The Secret Service man, it just isn't known.
Yeah. We know very little about John Hinckley. I guess you're in no position to enlighten us on the young man, 22 years old, who was the suspect, actually observed firing the shots.
I wish I were. We're out of touch with that here at this point.
Hinckley was from Evergreen, Colorado, and he's in the custody of the Secret Police, the Secret Service, rather. And Hinckley was arrested to the ground, as we know, earlier in the day. And information that we have on him is quite sketchy. However, he was educated outside of Dallas, and we're not going to draw any conclusions from that.
Dick, let's go over this just one more time for somebody who may have tuned in late about the president's condition primarily. It is that he has not undergone open heart surgery. It's open chest surgery. The bullet did not strike the heart. His condition, as reported by the doctors in the operating theater, is good and stable, and he should be out of surgery soon. However, they don't quantify the word soon.
Yeah. So it's open chest, not open heart. It hasn't been on this network. Ross Simpson and the rest of us have been talking about the open chest surgery throughout the day, which is certainly a far cry from having to go into the president's heart. We have some tape, Jim, that we want to play, and we want you to go back to your rounds and whatever information you have on the president's condition or on Jim Brady. Please give us a call immediately, and we'll get it on the air, of course, just then.
Certainly.
Paul Gleiser went to high school with the alleged assailant, John Hinckley, and the two attended Highland Park High School in Texas in the early 1970s. And Gleiser says Hinckley was just a quiet, regular kind of guy, and he spoke to Mutual News from Dallas. Let's play that.
It wasn't a discipline problem. He wasn't. I've made this point. 1971, 72, 73 was an emotionally charged time, what with the Vietnam War, and an awful lot of kids really did stand out. There was an awful lot of political activism in those days, and you kind of knew where people stood, or you knew where a lot of people stood anyway, and John was not one of those who stood out. He was not a far left-winger, a far right-winger. He was not a John Bircher. He was not a Students for Democratic Society. He didn't walk around with peace stickers on his notebooks. He just didn't stand out.
Well, so what kind of man was he? That was Paul Gleiser, who went to high school with the alleged assailant, John Hinckley. John W. Jack Hinckley, Jr. is 22 years old. He's the suspect in the attempted assassination of President Reagan. And he was described by other acquaintances as well as quiet, friendly, and sports-minded, but without any particular political leanings. Secret Service agents and local law enforcement officers quickly sealed off the home of Hinckley's parents in Evergreen, Colorado, which is a well-to-do community in the pine-covered foothills of the Rocky Mountains, about 25 miles southwest of Denver. Hinckley's father is president of Vanderbilt Energy Company of Denver. He closed his office shortly after he learned that his son had been arrested in Washington. He went to his split-level home, filled of rock and wood, where he and his wife were interviewed by Secret Service agents. A mystery man, the man who is the suspect in the alleged would-be assassin this afternoon of President Reagan, Presidential Secretary, Press Secretary Jim Brady, and 2 D.C. policemen. We do have a report from Paul Henderson, Mutual's Paul Henderson, who is positioning himself in front of the FBI building where the Bureau is awaiting the arrival of Hinckley for interrogation, obviously. Paul, are you on the line with us now?
Yes, Dick. As a matter of fact, we were told at D.C. Police Headquarters that he had been transferred, and so the role of the D.C. Police more or less seems to fade out of this at this point. It is, of course, a federal offense to make an assault upon the person of the president or even threaten him or a Secret Service agent. So the FBI moved into this case very early on in terms of the on-the-scene investigation at the Washington Hilton. They had a major mobile crime lab van over there and had taken an entire city block and were going over it with tweezers and plastic bags recovering physical evidence. So to the best of our knowledge, the suspect in the case, Hinckley, is now here. In FBI custody. We have had no official word from the Bureau. As a matter of fact, those reporters who are here are being held at the ground floor level in a waiting area, and we've had no official word so far, Dick.
What's going to happen to him once he gets to the Bureau, or if he's there? What kind of interrogation or what kind of arraignment process? But the Bureau does not do that, do they? You'll have to educate me, Paul.
Well, they can do it one of 2 ways: by direct information through a federal district judge or through the U.S. attorney. I imagine they will go the U.S. attorney route because the last thing that these people want to do here is to do anything that might foul up the case against the suspect. And as we all know, we've seen legal technicalities that have blown up cases that look like an absolutely sure thing. So I would suspect that they will continue their investigation, take this data to the U.S. attorney, then the U.S. attorney will proceed to obtain charges against the suspect.
You have no information on Hinckley himself, do you, Paul?
No, Dick, I don't. No, we've been sort of following him around town this afternoon from the time he was arrested over at the hotel, and then over to the D.C. police headquarters, and now here. And it's been a chase.
Still no confirmation or resolution of the problem on the weapon itself. We've heard reports it was a .38. We've heard other reports from the Secret Service spokesman Jack Warner saying that it was a .22. But the consensus seems to be it was a larger caliber than the .22, which the Secret Service is talking about.
Well, from the witnesses I spoke to, it did seem quite loud. However, there are different sorts of .22 caliber loads. You can have a .22 short, which sounds like a cap pistol, or a .22 Magnum, which sounds like a .38. So either is entirely possible.
The weapon itself is in custody, I would gather.
Yes, that's correct.
So what are you going to be doing? Waiting there for a briefing or some information that the FBI may provide later on?
That's correct. We're going to see what the next legal procedure is in this affair, and that will be developing here.
Well, thank you, Paul. Stay with us, please. What we're doing is providing continuous coverage of the attempted assassination this afternoon at the Washington Hilton Hotel of President Ronald Reagan, who is undergoing surgery at this moment at George Washington University Hospital to remove a bullet from his left chest area. We have information from the White House within the past half hour that the president is in good and stable condition. What we don't know is how long that surgery is going to take or what the post-operative procedure is. On the non-medical and political side, we have Vice President George Bush, who is returning from Texas, should be back in Washington momentarily. He'll land at Andrews Air Force Base, be helicoptered, we gather, directly to the White House, where he will assume the role of president as long as President Reagan remains incapacitated. He will get good advice, of course, from Secretary of State Alexander Haig, who, as far as we know, was still at the White House, along with several other key cabinet officials. The unpleasant thing about Jim Brady, the White House news secretary, we have heard that he's alive, but we've also heard reports that he has succumbed to his forehead wound. We just don't know, and it will be some time. So what we do have is that Jim Brady is a former Chicago public relations man and one of the most respected and delightful press secretaries to come Washington's way in recent administrations. He was 40 years old. He was with the president this afternoon as the two of them, accompanied by other aides, were leaving the Hilton Hotel where the president had just delivered an address before the AFL-CIO Building Trades Union. And that was going to be a major story, what the president told the unionists and how he wanted their support for his budget cuts. And we were prepared to spend the rest of the day talking about that till around 2:30 this afternoon when those shots were fired outside of the Washington Hilton Hotel. John Hinckley Sr., the father of the suspect in the shooting of President Reagan, rushed home this afternoon to be with his wife. As we told you earlier, they have a rather impressive home near Denver, Colorado. The senior Hinckley is a president of an oil gas exploration company, and we have talked to people who have known young Hinckley. He's 22 years old. They said that he was not political. He was not involved in any of the protest marches. He was quiet. He was friendly. Not the sort at all who would pull a .22 caliber pistol on the President of the United States. He is now in custody, and he is either on his way to the FBI building here in Washington, or he's already arrived. We have Paul Henderson there. We have Jim Slade at the hospital for late reports on the President's condition and that of Jim Brady. And we have Bill Grudy, who is staking out the White House, where Larry Speaks and a whole cadre of White House press people will be manning their positions round the clock, providing late information and the answer, we hope, to the one truly significant question, the condition and the survival prospects for President Reagan. White House press secretary was shot. Let's see what I'm looking at copy here to see whether there's anything late breaking that we have not provided you with. We took to the air almost on a continuous basis, preserving the mutual hourly and half-hourly newscasts. And we'll continue to do that throughout the evening or as long as the story continues to break. We'll have John Harchie coming in with The World Today and the half-hourly newscast, of course, coming up at 6:30 Eastern Time. But we will be staffed here, as we always are, around the clock, and we will be providing continuous coverage and interrupting any kind of scheduled programming with the answers to the questions which you want and need to know. President Reagan's recovery from George Washington University Hospital's surgical unit and the condition of White House Press Secretary Jim Brady. That's all we have for you up to now. Stay tuned to Mutual throughout the evening on our regularly scheduled newscasts and this continuous coverage which we'll provide you. And all I can say now is that this is Dick Rossay with Mutual Broadcasting in Washington, and we'll return to our regular programming in about 20 seconds.